Hello and welcome to the EPROM 9. As you will be able to have predicted from the title, this video is about Aspergers Syndrome, which has nothing to do with this sort of good stuff or about I got this. It's a PLCC EPROM. I love these things and they're so rare. This is the original glass chip I have discussed many different times. It's not the exact same type I had, but close enough. And I have 5 of them. And this links directly what I'm saying. Obsessions. Aspergers Syndrome, with complete help from the internet, because I don't plan things, I don't use scripts, it all just comes out of here, which isn't the greatest when you're trying to explain a point, but hey, you just do it in your style, don't you? And of course, well, there's a real lack of awareness on Asperger's Syndrome, and as I have it myself, that is thoroughly frustrating. And when people are like, what is it? It is far too complex to come up in just a simple sentence or two. This is a whole psychological thing that is such an unknown to a lot of researchers. Hell, there's areas of it that there's little, if any, research in. And one goes into sex and autism, pretty much. There's next to nothing on that. It's quite fun. It's quite interesting actually browsing some of the more stuff related to the adult stuff, which applies to me more than just a generic, as people seem to think it just resides in children. No. It's something you have for your entire life. And yeah, it does result in erratic behaviour. But let's start. We have symptoms of Asperger's Syndrome. This is a good place to start, don't you think? Average or above average intelligence, yeah, that's a good thing. I would say I lead somewhere between average and above average intelligence. Somewhere in between. I'm not the smartest bugger alive, but I'm also not just dumbass Joe Blogs or something. Difficulties with high-level language skills, such as verbal reasoning, problem solving, making influences and predictions. Yes, I do find it very difficult to argue a case, even when I know I'm right and I've got the facts on it. You try and argue it to someone straight in front of you. I struggle with that massively. At least with a medium like this, you can at least think it over. You're not having someone come up to you straight away, or if they do ask a question, you can at least think it over and come up with some sort of rational solution to it. Because, yeah, I do think about subjects beforehand and have a rough idea of what I want to say, although half the time I forget some of the stuff. But yeah, there are problems with that, and it's just things like that. I mean, how do you reason with someone? Some people are just beyond reasoning with. They don't seem to reside in the realm of logic, and more reside in the realm of arrogance. And yeah, making decisions. Well, it doesn't say that there, but decisions isn't a strong point of mine. Yeah, if you're a researcher into this subject, this is very useful. Someone with it, explaining about it. What more could you ask for? And this will take as many card takes as it will take. And what have we got? Difficulty in empathising with others. Yes. Someone can tell you that a relative has died, but unless you've experienced it yourself, it's difficult to really comprehend or really care. Yeah, you can go by the understanding that losing relatives is never fun, it's horrible. But yeah, the emotional unit isn't quite wired in the same way or programmed in the same way. And either a lot of emotions I find are completely missing, or so numbed down that it's a rarity I actually feel it. The only time I probably would have really felt some form of empathy was when I had a trip to Auschwitz in Poland. But anyone who's not affected by that, by what went on there, literally cannot have any conceivable emotions. Another thing is with the empathy thing is you often get people who say, oh, anyone without empathy is a bad person. That's not true. I lack it, but I'm not a bad person. It just means I can't empathise with your pain. I can still understand the concept of the pain you're suffering, but I can't feel it myself. Because that's just the way it's wired. That's the way the code is. What's this one? Problems understanding another person's point of view. This is more of one I used to more suffer with until I started taking on a logical aspect. But then again, if they're not coming from a logical aspect, then I will have no way to comprehend or understand why they see it this way. Unless there's some sort of logical motivation I know about, maybe something in their past history that could lead to that decision. All I can do is contemplate potential theories, and that's just that. They end up just being theories or hypotheses, depending on what you want to call it. Difficulty in engaging in social routines such as conversations and small talk. This is often due... Yeah, this is one I struggle with, especially when it comes to sort of making new friends. Is always a difficult one, because a lot of the time I literally have no relation in interests to what other people do. The one thing I do run on is comedy. I'm the one who will come out with the obscenely sexual jokes, so at least I can be the one who makes everyone laugh, even if I don't know what the hell they're all rambling on about. They're on about some party where Joe Bloggs vomited over the wall and some other crap happened that's supposedly funny, but I can just sit through straight-faced. And I'm more sort of like, why wasn't I invited? At least then I could have shared that experience and amused as they sort of projectile vomited over everything in sight. But yeah, conversations, it's not so much conversations, I'm quite fine with conversations and small talk, but it's the social aspect. I'm better, but I still find it difficult. Problems with controlling feelings such as anger, depression, anxiety. Yeah, controlling emotions is difficult. Yeah, there are some I can control. Hell, I can switch some on and off, or at least dumb them down to a point that they don't really affect me, but things like anger's impossible to control. Depression, apparently that is a mental illness in itself, but I'm not sure why. It's just when you feel really quite sad. That often happens when family members die. Preferred routines and schedules which can result in stress if it is disrupted. A prime example of that would be when the databases teacher decided to change it from the officially set timetable, which I will get out, check that there's no sort of university details on it, and there is sort of. So I will more sort of tell you type thing. So databases are supposed to be at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday and have the lecture and lab together. What the database teacher decided to do was split it up, so 1 week you get the lecture, 1 week you get the database, and change the times around. The amount of them I ended up being late for is ridiculous. In fact, I wasn't the only one in the class, but if you start changing things around and moving it round to a sort of ad hoc routine, that's difficult to cope with. Change like that is not something I go with. I set into a routine, I like to have, like I have my routine in the morning. I kind of force myself out of bed in the morning, piss around on the laptop for a while, get in the shower, maybe fall asleep for a few more minutes, about half an hour more, get out, get ready, watch some more YouTube or something, head off towards lectures and whatnot. But yes, you do need your routine, and doing anything outside the routine, like work outside the routine, can be extremely difficult. And specialist fields of interests or hobbies, I suppose I don't need to go into much detail on that because the channel is kind of dedicated to that sort of stuff. Such as all these various vintage computers around me and continued electronic trinkets that I must have and be able to play with. And you will very rarely find that I leave a facility without some form of thing. And when people ask me, why do you carry around this stuff, it's like, I don't really have an answer for it. I just do. It's a sort of like comfort zone thing for me. I'm happy if I have one of my little toys to play with, that I can sit there in class with this and then just record random stuff that happens. Or I take along something like one of my Husky Hunters and sit there programming it in a programming lecture or something. And having my own laptop to take around with me is an absolute fantastic thing. Because that's for jump cut and not due to editing. The little memory chip ran out. But yes, we're on to interests, and yeah, it is an obsession. But what I've done with my obsession, at least towards the computer side of things, my maths let me down on the electronic side of things from me becoming an electronics engineer, is I've tuned it into a career. Well, I am in the process of doing that, tuning an interest in computers and computer equipment into a career. And it's not actually uncommon for people with autism or Aspergers Syndrome to take up careers and interests in such things, because at the end of the day, what are computers? They run on bits and bytes and logic. Everything in these is understandable. There's no ambiguous parts to it. It is all logically defined and makes sense. In one sense, it's literal. There's no interpretation of what goes on in here, because it happens as it happens. And yeah, you can get errors in the design where you haven't overlooked every single detail, and there's glitches in programs and hardware. But this makes far more sense to me than any social situation ever could. I mean, hell, I am actually becoming pretty good at programming in C, and I'm surprised at how quickly I'm picking it up. It's logic. Once you understand the logic behind it, because there's different types of logic, such as TLL and CMOS, and they require different conversion methods to communicate with each other. So say you run on one particular type of logic. Let's say I run on TLL, but maybe what I want to do is CMOS. You just need to find that conversion logic to communicate. And that's not an impossible task. When it comes to people, there is no conversion logic, to be brutally honest. It retains it. Who knows what protocol they run on. And because of my understanding towards computers and electronics, I associate just about everything with it, as with my examples there. And this website makes an excellent sort of checklist guide to go off. So now we'll scroll up. Yes, I'm not doing this in a standard order, but I'm not waiting to do stuff. So yes, it does affect how the brain processes the information. Just simple mind tests I do, whereas someone else would pick out the smiley face or the bigger object at the end of it. And guess what? About 9 times out of 10 I pick the exact non-predicted one. Yeah, I might get a few which I hit which are predicted, but all in all, my brain is so obtuse and obscure in the way it processes information that standard psychology doesn't really apply to me. I see things in a different light to everyone else. Just tests like that prove that to me. I look at things from a purely sort of analytical, logical point of view, although some may not agree. That's because, once again, people who say they run on logic, well, Joe Blogs, or a good example would have been Dan from college, may have run on CMOS, whereas I was TETL. And because they were different types of logic, they weren't directly compatible and didn't see where each other were coming from. That'd be the best way to describe it, I find. And of course, common characteristics, oh bloody hell, and that's another thing, language difficulties. Characteristics include such as not being able to pronounce words or random blackouts of words, difficulty in forming friendships, yeah, I covered that sort of. Communication difficulties, yeah, such as tendency to take things literally, Jesus, yes. The amount of jokes and that I have taken literally, even if it's sometimes friendly banter. Half the time, I don't necessarily notice, though. See it as a personal attack and start defending myself, going up into ready to fight mode. And an inability to understand social rules and body language. Yes. Social rules, they're never defined in a clear textbook. I mean, they're never defined in something like this. Or this. Which one's this? Nope, that's not it. It's the photography one about camera lenses, which I thought was interesting. I could do learning about that. They're never defined in a little book like this that gives you basic sort of rundown. It's just like you're expected to know these things, and well, something went wrong in the data transfer in the womb, and I never got those particular program segments, and to this day I still don't really have a clue what they are. And this so-called line everyone keeps discussing, I seem to regularly cross it and blast off into the distance in my little Volkswagen Fox, completely oblivious to the fact I've not only passed it, but it's disappeared into the horizon. And suddenly, especially when this comes to sort of sexual jokes, then people start getting creeped out. But hey, the sexual jokes are the ones that never fail to make people laugh, although they could creep people out when you start to go flying past this line that everyone goes on about. But if I can't deem where it is, I don't know. At least if you know where it is, like Photon says, he's always on it. At least he knows where it is. I don't. So I regularly cross it, and vice versa, sort of like an oscilloscope trace around the 0 volt point. You got the oscilloscope trace, 0 volts. I'd say you could call me like a sort of erratic signal going. What else have we got in here to go? Nice checklist. Yes, you do need the right help. Strategies, whatnot, that's about teaching. Emotions and other people. Yes, there are still things, yes, they can be misinterpreted. And that's the thing, there is stuff, yeah, I can get the basic sorts of ones, happy, sad, angry and whatnot, but there's a sort of in-between grey area ones that I still struggle to comprehend what the hell is going on. And because of that, I don't know, really, you don't know if someone's being bitchy or sly or what, or sometimes because of this unknown I get paranoid that someone that I like hates me when really they don't. Maybe they just got annoyed with me for that point because I did something that annoyed them, didn't really realise what. Or maybe they made a joke and I misinterpreted it as them getting pissed off. That is very common, still to this day. Still extremely common. And of course, yeah, this leads to unfair labels. Because, yeah, it's quite simple. And of course, when you haven't been through a situation, you don't really know what someone else is going to be feeling, especially when you haven't been through it yourself. Human emotions are not simple. They're not like logic in your computer where they can be broken down into individual elements and worked out how they interact. No. And of course, yeah, the amount of things I've done inappropriately and caused offence to people. Hell, there is lots of stuff in that category of things that I've offended people with that haven't necessarily come out. Yeah, and I think the trouble is, if I tell people, will people get offended by it? I mean, end of the day, I know better now. But there's one memorable time involving a German in Greece that comes to mind as the prime example. But I'm not willing to go into that at the moment. If you're interested, PM, but make sure you're not offended easily, because I don't like to offend people. It's generally not a good thing. Ah yes, sexual codes of conduct. Once again, that has hundreds of bazillions of unwritten rules about how you've got to interact with a young lady or whatnot, or whatever you're interested in. If you're interested in a brick wall, you don't have to do much interaction. All you need to do is drill a hole in it while I stick your wang in it. Whoa! Why would someone be attracted to a brick wall? Why the hell did I even think that up? See what I mean? My mind just doesn't work like everyone else's. Just the idea of that. Oh god. It's just one of those. Right, back on topic before I get distracted. I can't get that image out of my head and it's just amusing me. See, I just find anything like that just funny. And, God damn it, it's still there. Where's the erase button when you need it? But yeah, there's these codes of conduct of how you must react, and it's just like, why do you have to go through all this impossible to understand bullshit to get a girlfriend? Why does it... Right, well, back to where we were, but why do you need all that hinty stuff? Well, why can't it be nice, blunt, simple, clear to understand? I fancy you, you fancy me, fancy going out this evening for a meal, maybe have a chat, and then maybe in the evening, if it all goes well, we go back to my place or your place and have a fuck. Why can't it just be that blunt and simple? Because that is literally... How are you supposed to understand all this hinting crap? There's so much... And hidden messages and that. It's just like, ugh. And it's just like, there's loads of other times where you're not even allowed to... Some girls get iffy when you just admire them. And it's just... Talk about bloody mixed messages, and it just gets so confusing. I'm just like, you know what? Sod it. I'm doing it my way. And you're not really sure what approach to take. I'm lucky that I actually found someone who was more as direct as me. And that's how my casuals came about. But other than that, an actual relationship, I've tried and failed miserably. I don't know. just keep trying, I guess. But yeah, there's these whole things, and yeah, immature, yeah, you could say that. It's like there's all this thing like, oh, get to know them, but half the time when they get to know them and they realise you don't have a clue about their hinting and whatnot, their interest just goes gone. Yeah, they might still be interested in you as a friend, but that's about it. When maybe you might have wanted a little more. They're so disappointing, and yet some dickbag who you never got on with and who was because they were a dickbag seems to pull a lovely young lady. And to be honest, you know yourself, you would probably actually be far better for them than that bloody dickbag. But just because of this stupid social crap, they get the young lady. It's not fair. And it's quite frankly frustrating. I don't... What does one do? I honestly don't know. And it's just like any sort of motivation and confidence is long gone as throughout your teens. Most people my age have had several flings. Issues with partners, yeah, they can suffer because, especially if they don't know about it. It's a very grey area that there's no real research into whole sexuality relation to it. It'd be quite interesting to see if anyone comes up with any other ideas. And then you get people who seem to go under the myth, oh, autistic people aren't interested in sex. That's bullcrap. We are just as much as anyone else. It's just, yeah, here we go. This is a good example of what I was saying. For example, a 20-year-old with Aspergers Syndrome may display behaviours which befit a teenager. I think that sums it up quite nicely, actually. I would say I probably still do have an immature sort of reaction to it all. I don't know. And yet I'm incredibly liberal. Because it doesn't faze me whether someone's gay or trans or likes whatever they like, because why should it? I guess you could say parts of it are more mature than other parts, but that's that really. Workplace, I haven't really had any problems at work. I mean, a lot of the time people don't really actually notice I have it. Some people have never noticed until I've told them. So it's not obvious from first impressions that you have it, because it's a hidden thing. It's something that is just not obvious. And then we have sort of career suggestions. So we've got computer programming, drafting, don't know what that is, commercial arts, I'm guessing that'd be like designing your advertising, photography, equipment design, mechanic, appliance repair, all sort of practical things. Video game designer, and there's just programming and engineering. Yeah, you could say I'm definitely under a thing of engineering. Mathematician, physician. And that's the thing. It's because you have your above average to average intelligence and a devoted interest to something, you go into a field, and it's not uncommon for PhD professors to have various variants of autism. And there's actually an article I read about some girl describing a teacher who did not care about their appearance and just wore a bow tie and never showed any sign of emotion. And they didn't know why, but they were their favourite teacher. There's something about them that clicked. And that's the thing, you do find that. And you do have to make sure you're getting your substance, so hobbies are essential. It's no good just doing what is just in this course script. No, you need to get hold of your own equipment and play with it. And then a lot of these scientists and that, like Einstein and that, there's theories that he was potentially autistic and whatnot. Some are even known. That you get people, oh, you'll never make it into secondary school. I'm at university. I mean, for God's sake, the first year I got a 2-1, so it's hardly limiting my intelligence. I hardly call it the... And that's why I would probably be in the more above average spectrum of intelligence than anything else. Although mental maths is not my strong point, I'm not going to lie. In fact, if anything, I remember some Facebook IQ test which all it consisted of was like mental maths, and I got 80 something for it. So my mental maths IQ is about 80 something. But a lot of these online tests are quite bogus. I want to actually find an official IQ test and see what I get on that, because I'm pretty sure they're written down on paper. Because the last time I had an IQ test, I was a little kid, and I actually had... I remember Mum telling me that I had quite a very high IQ, but God knows what it was. It was so long ago, and I'm not exactly great at remembering numbers. But yeah, that's kind of what the basics of it are, and that is just the basics bordering on it into about half an hour video. You could literally do a PhD on this subject easily. There's so many unexplored areas. And that's why one thing I think about is if someone actually researching the subject comes across this, which I don't think is entirely unlikely, because this is going to go out into searches, so more than just my average viewer base will see this, which is kind of what I want. I want potential researchers to see and maybe gain a little extra from it. But let's actually go into the mindset, because there's nothing that seems to actually cover the mindset. How I view things. But how do I describe this through the limited vocabulary of words and whatnot? I suppose I could assist it with pictures if I grab a pen. Paper. From the printer. So I just check that works, and it works happily. Through a little circle. Actually, I know a good insight into my mind. Where's my class notebook? Here we go. Pictures, stuff. This is the sort of stuff. Now, generally, they get sort of scribbly things. Like in databases, we get random sorts of stuff. My mind is very random, while everything relates to everything, so I can be thinking about tea while the next minute goes to computers or something. Everything relates to everything in the end, even down to molecular structures. You can relate everything through that. But you do, there's some binary stuff from subnetting, more stuff to do with work, some stuff to do with more work. I need to email that off to the relevant person, and there's nothing after this. But this is sort of a good example of stuff, sort of little like what people would call random drawings, but you could say they express sorts of feelings at the times you really want to look into it, where I don't know, that one would definitely express feelings at the time when I was sitting there bored in databases with a gun firing for a database plaque, and then my usual sort of array of drawing bombs and guns and whatever else, and robotics, and quite often vintage computers, because my mind doesn't think in a sort of straight way. It's often sort of one thing to the next, and then it sort of relates in a sort of vague way to that thing over there, and it's quite erratic how it goes through, especially when you start thinking about computers, because computers relate to just about everything in some sense. Then of course you get logical conclusions. How do I explain my logic other than bringing up standard examples such as TLL or CMOS? What would be a good example of a situation of logic? Atheism would be a good example, because then I can explain it to a point. how I came to that conclusion. Although I did go through a phase where I said where we were and how I came to the conclusion of atheist was basically I objectively looked at all the various things, at how religion defined the world as being flat and God doing all this, and then you look at what science has achieved for it. You look at what they've done for the world and what developments they have caused, and science is easily the outright winner. It goes through because science is about proving it, having a theory and trying or disproving it, trying to disprove it, or normally is one scientist, but you can be trying to prove something as well. So then you look at that, and then you look at things like magic tricks and Father Christmas, and they are just fabrications. I mean, magic tricks are fun, but they're tricks. It's like David Blaine walking over the River Thames. I think he did some sort of walking on water trick. Was that one of those ones that can only be done on TV and everyone in shots of the so-called public were actually in on the trick? Or is it one you can pull off like in a theatre or have a specially set out system? That is the question. There is the magician thing which exposes that, and I find that fascinating. And you just look at it, things like that, and just things that are considered magic in general or supernatural, and you start thinking, well, actually, no. And then you look at how the universe was built, and it's like, no, how can there be a God? It was just a matter of chance. When you put it into probability and sheer numbers, it was bound out of all the bazillions of universes, planets within universes, and then you've got dimensions on top that nothing was ever going to be able to do. That no one could create that, and such an idea is just that. It's a belief. It has no grounding in fact, and therefore, like Spider-Man, doesn't exist. And then of course that moves on to things like, makes you question, what is paranormal activity? I mean, yeah, I've experienced it, but is it really the dead? Or could it be some sort of connection, because I remember my science teacher explaining to me about something called time footprints, where an event in the past leaves a sort of imprint of information stuck in that area. So like a battle on a battlefield, that sometimes under the right circumstances, I don't know how all this works, but it is possible under the right circumstances to get a glimpse at this event happening, or at least parts of it, and see a battalion of soldiers walking by. I mean, yes, there is more evidence to suggest paranormal activity, but I don't see it as any sort of magic phenomenon. There has to be a scientific explanation, but maybe the researchers who are trying to find it are looking in the wrong areas. Maybe we should be looking into dimensional physics, because maybe it's to do something with the dimensions actually overlapping and time zones within the dimensions overlapping, allowing a particular dimension to become visible for a brief moment in our own. And there's often another theory I remember hearing about, a ring where energy is actually rings and it seals up wormholes that they float around. And it could be that when you get those cold spots, that's actually a wormhole opening and the energy just being either absorbed or pushed away from it before it can seal it, and then you get this sort of time thing that goes through. This is purely just theory on my part, purely a hypothesis. But it might be worth one for the good old physicists to give a think over. But yes, and it's just things like that, and yeah, there just is no such thing as magic. It is all grounded in mathematics. Everything is built on this mathematics. This is subnetting mathematics that you see here. But the point is, it's mathematics. It's built on mathematics, subnetting, computers, the universe. Everything in existence can be represented by numbers. Yeah, someone's moving outside. And that's the point. And that means, theoretically, it would be possible to transfer information from someone's brain to a computer, which would be quite useful, but it would have a dark side if the government got control of that technology. But we won't be getting into that here. And that is sort of how my logic works. Other things, such as me caring for my appearance, I have had stages where I just haven't given a rat's arse. That's 12:30. And I just haven't, plain and simple. Whereas now I'm just quite happy, jeans, t-shirts, I've got my glasses which look fine on me, and I'm quite happy with overly unmaintained long hair. Shave every so often, although I find shaving tedious, but most people do. And it's also quite humid in here. That's going to make sleeping difficult tonight. Yeah, another sleepless night and I have to get up in the morning. Grr. But yeah, we find anything else to sort of keep on going, or have we run out? Because that is that. NASA, NSA, National Autistic Society. No laughing matter, yes. In adults are often left undiagnosed, and yes, and when you don't have the right help, you're just condemning someone if you're not helping them. Thankfully, parents picked up something was not right when I was a baby, so investigation was immediately, and they fought tooth and nail to get me the support I needed. And because they've always fought for me, here I sit in university, got through my first year with a 2-1, and I'm quite happy. And because I know what's wrong with me, I'm quite happy and confident in it. So confident in it, but Mum doesn't reckon I have the highest self-esteem, but depends what you're talking about to where my self-esteem levels are higher or not. Because like everyone, I have my weaknesses. But you never discuss or give out your weaknesses to other people, because they like to use it against you. So any trolls thinking, oh, I can use this against him, nah, because this is all just facts and information. Because I did actually have a first troll recently. It was cute. They even set up their own fake channel just to attempt to ridicule me. And you know what the height of their ridiculing was? Basically, variants of calling me gay. Really? It was cute. And also quite hilarious. That they actually thought I'd care. They obviously didn't bother to watch any of the stuff I actually did wear. Right, now the battery's playing up, so I'm doing a really dodgy ad hoc thing that I do not recommend. I don't have my power supply to hook up. But, as I was saying, that was the best they could come out with. If anything, if people start going on trying to ridicule me in that way, I'll just play on it and creep them the fuck out, because I just find that amusing. But anyway, I just blocked that channel and it was closed by the next day. Yeah, they're easy to deal with. I don't know why people worry about them. But because of the battery running out, I've completely lost my train of thought, which is the problem. Because I can't hold a concise sort of idea of what's going on, I am incredibly forgetful. I could literally walk from the labs to here and completely forget about what I was supposed to do or what I was going to do. Completely. and not remember it until I see that person the next day, and then that relation comes back and memory comes back with it. Because my memory is cluttered up with so much random crap, basically. But yeah. Oh yes, I remember my parents reading a curious incident of the dog in the night time. But it's like that, and I've completely forgotten my train of thought. Bloody hell, stupid battery is running out. I've got the other one on charge, so when that one runs out again I can just swap it. Maybe the best thing would be to do is continue tomorrow, I don't know. But yeah, it's one of those things. I suppose could go more into sorts of things. What was it? But yeah, and then you do get that. You actually, on that, that's a good point. You don't know what I'm thinking, so don't worry about them comments. It's just me talking to myself as I think, because I do that. It's another thing. I express what I think verbally, and loads of people think that's weird. It annoys me when it's just like, oh, someone comes out with a comment. You basically repeat it because you're thinking out loud, and they come out with a sarcastic comment, and it's like, you know what? Fuck you. Do I not have the right to think out loud if I want to? I don't care if it's stating the obvious or something you've already thought up. I think out loud. That's just what I do. I often talk to myself, and some say it's a sign of madness. Then that makes me mad, doesn't it? But I'd say there's a lot more sort of insane people than me out there. Yeah, I'm mad, but there's at least reason for it. Some people just like to be mad or give an impression of mad for humour. I'm just naturally mad. Battery's holding up, which is good. Let's just check it. How is it holding? It is holding well, actually. It's still on the 1 bar. It normally flashes red when it gets low. So this method could work. But I would not recommend it. But I'm only doing it as a one-off because I want to keep these batteries good. But yeah, then you get the sort of like prejudiced. How do you describe it? Bullies, basically. How do you describe how narrow-minded and prejudiced they really are? Yeah, it can be for reasons where they're picked on, so they feel the only way to deal with it is pick on someone weaker than, or who they think is weaker to them, until they start picking on someone like me, who, well, I have been known to just lamp them one. And despite what everyone says, out of all the methods I have tried, that is the most successful at dealing with them. So when people are like, oh, violence isn't the answer, to be honest, especially when you're young, you can easily get away with it. When you're older, you're going to have to be a bit more sly and think, maybe humiliate them in front of everyone, but you get the point. But when you're young, you can get away with just problem solved. They never touch you again. A good example of this is when I was young, there was this kid on the neighbourhood who used to give me constant grief, like curly haired kid. And one day he just took it too far, where he was messing about with my new bike, and I think he slammed it down at the floor, and I was just like, right, that's it. With a bicycle helmet on, of course, just went whoop. He went straight down to the floor like a sack of potatoes, crying away. My brother, of course, at which point saw this, grabbed my bike and dragged me back to the house. At which point, I'm paranoid about this battery now. It's fine. Took me back to the house, where it wasn't long before this kid was patrolling with his dad around the neighbourhood, obviously trying to find me. Of course, he didn't know where I lived. Parents easily clocked on what happened, and I wasn't in trouble because I was just sticking up for myself. If anything, they were proud of me. But yeah, and guess what? He never bothered me again. So when people go to you, oh, hitting bullies won't work. Actually, yeah, knocking them to the floor does work. And it's an effective method at dealing with them, Because these people are so thick and stupid that the only way to get through to them is go to their level. No logic can literally get through to them, no matter how hard you try. They're so that arrogant and ill-bent in their ways. It's the only thing they understand, so... And sometimes, well, other so-called bullies witnessing the event might think twice, or might think, oh, he's actually pretty cool, he stands up for himself, he actually is quite tough, and I respect that for some unknown reason. But yeah, it does mean, yeah, I've had my fair share of bullying, I'm not going to lie, and I have dealt with it in various methods. I've dealt with it in all the methods really available. And to be honest, punching them was the best. But when you're an adult, you can't really get away with that, so my tactics are a little more evolved. Such as that with that horrible girl last year where I just rubbed her clean cutlery round the dirty, horrible, skanky sink which had festering food in it. I was half tempted to rub her spoons round my toilet rim, but I never did that and I regret that. But yeah, when you're an adult you've got to be a bit more sly in it. Keep that as advice. You really, to be honest, you really need to just find your own method to deal with them. But don't let them get on top of you and like force you into suicide. Basically what I'm saying is stand up for yourself and don't let them arses push you around. Stand up for yourself. Fight back. It's worth fighting for yourself and for what you believe in. Fight. Don't ever give up. And that's one thing. I wonder if my perseverance has something to do with my autism. Being completely perseverant to my goals. I've gone through thick and thin to get where I am. It's been no easy task. I'm not comparing it to anyone else who's had a hard time and saying my hard time was harder than yours. No, I'm just stating it has been no easy task of getting to the stage of where I'm at. Because you also get doubted. The people are like, oh, he's disabled, he's just some useless pile of scrap that should have probably been coal at birth. And it's just like, you know what, fuck you, I'm going to prove you wrong. And guess what, everyone who has ever doubted me, I've proven them wrong. I have nothing to prove to anyone anymore. So when you get a Jim Bob whoever doubting you, prove them wrong. Prove it. It's the loveliest feeling in the world when you can just go up there with your certificates and, ha! I got a C in maths. You said I never would. And I literally did that to someone who said that to me. I was just like, yeah, I got a C in maths and you said I never would. I proved you wrong. And I said it like that, proud of this moment. Maybe not necessarily the best way of approaching it, but hey, I achieved my goal. I proved them wrong. And I proved everyone at primary school wrong. They didn't even think I was going to get into secondary school and primary school. Didn't help that they didn't teach me to read and write. But hey. That's another story on its own. But yeah. In fact, it's not uncommon that kids come out of primary school illiterate. Something's wrong in the education system. And one of the uni tutors is actually doing a PhD into finding out exactly what. But yeah, you want to do that, stand up for yourself. Doesn't matter who you are, whether you've got a disability or not, just stand up for yourself. Stand up to these bloody people who doubt you or pick on you. Stand up to it. Prove them wrong. That's my advice. And that is basically summing up Asperger's Syndrome. How it kind of affects me in a sort of way. And it doesn't stop me from doing stuff that other people do, such as driving a car, being in uni, being successful. Because everything I have ever set out to achieve, I have achieved, and I continually plan to. Because that's just the way I am. I don't ever give up. I mean, even my one of my networking teachers, Canty he's called, don't know his surname, can't pronounce it, but he was impressed that all through it, with the Cisco CCNA1, with all the trouble I went through with it, because there was some trouble getting it all done and whatnot, and issues with whatnots and stuff, I just persevered and completed it, and now I'm on to the next stage. Then I'll get through all those stages. But you know what, because I've got through that initial stage and I know how to deal with it, this is turning out to be a long one, isn't it? But hold on, because there's another way. How I view other people, that should actually be an interesting one for any psychologist or anyone who's just generally in there. I find the human body an absolutely fascinating thing. A lot of people are like, if they got the chance of watching an operation, they'd be like, oh, that's disgusting. I would see it as like watching a tear. I would actually see it exactly like this. Watching an operation happen would be like watching a tear down of something like this. Absolutely fascinating, because you'd be seeing all the parts that make the body tick. The heart, the liver, the lungs. Especially if you could see it functioning when the chest cavity is open, you can see things like the heart beating and the lungs doing their expansion and compression of the diaphragm, and how all the various other parts interact. I would just find that fascinating. And how I see it is, the human body is hardware. The brain is essentially a supercomputer, the most advanced supercomputer in existence that we know of. And you know what the soul is? The soul is software. It is the operating system. The soul and the body, they can't react without each other, because the soul is the software. It's the operating system. It's you. It's the software that runs in your brain. And like any software, it needs to run on a particular architecture. And of course, architecture of the human brain varies from person to person, so you get variance in this software. That's what the soul is. The soul is software, nothing more. It is software, just software. As the body is hardware. And it's just one of those things, and it's just... And it's amazing, because it's like this self-aware system that's aware of its surroundings. I mean, Mr. Husky here isn't aware of its surroundings at all. Neither is Mr. Video Camera when it decides, when it's panning around. It doesn't know it's looking at some volcano erupting or a beautiful sunset. It's just recording what it sees onto some kind of storage medium, in this case, mini DV tapes. Which are absolutely awesome. I love these things. But you get my point. And of course you'll find there are relations in how the human brain actually works compared to this. And you take it down to that level, and I can just begin to start to understand how humans work, and even how my own mind works. It's nothing more than an elaborate computer. That's what it is. There's no all magic about it. The disadvantage is when this particular computer fails, there really isn't any options for repairing it. It's a bit like an iPad or an iPhone or something. When it breaks, it's a throw in the bin device. And that's the thing, I don't get why my mum wouldn't want me to donate my body to science. Because just think of the amount of good that could do. As I was saying, it brings other parts to life. But that's the thing. That's what humans are. And it's another thing, is because of, well, my differences to that, I've never really found anywhere that I fit in apart from university. It's the first place I've found that I fit in, because there's other like-minded people, or at least people with interests that are similar to my own. They can see something that I carry around and appreciate why I have it. and actually see the interest in it. And that's the great thing also about YouTube, because there's people who watch this and understand and actually feel the same sort of passions that I do. And quite often I do feel segregated from the rest of society because I can't really relate to him. You've got like the standard like iconic male who's just like football drunky, beer in one hand, like football flag or something in the other, wearing an England shirt and stuff, and it's like, well, I'm not interested in that. I only really care like all that. It's just, no. I just want to do what I want to do. I'm not interested in being like this all represented. I am not the traditional type, because I just view things logically, because that's just how I run. Bring an understanding. I can walk around the street and it's just like, because this sort of stuff is my obsession, I just look at that lovely clock they have at the station, an electromechanical relay, like, you know, the old style digital ones which have them like flip up fluorescent things that are like relay opera, have them, what are them little modules called? I don't know, but you know what I mean. And they make that noise, and they have little actuators that move the segments into different positions to represent the numbers. I just think, wouldn't that be lovely for teardowns? What sorts of useful parts could be in there? And actually, anyone else with any form of Asperger's on this, feel free to discuss and add your input. Also, I highly encourage people to make video responses on the subject, as well as throw in any questions on any areas they're not sure. Because this is like, I want to basically get this sort of information out there, because not enough people know what it is or how it affects it, and I am telling you straight by using myself as an example, which can be useful. But on that note, we are coming to the sort of end where I can add anything without really repeating myself. And unless I come up with anything in the meantime, we're not going to be seeing much. But I am going to do a pre-video which is going to explain this one. And in conclusion, basically, the internet is a wondrous place, and I am quite frankly amazed at just how much the researchers have picked up and actually gotten into the psyche of people like me to try and find an understanding. It's not the fact that people don't understand how I work, it's more the fact that most people don't, but there are those that do, because they're putting in research. And actually, it would be good to get in contact with someone who's doing research on the subject, because, well, maybe they can answer a few questions I have. Because I am a curious bugger and I like to know everything that I can. And from that, from the actual EPROMs that represent the EPROM 9, these little beasts, I would like to say night-night and farewell, and have a good evening. And I hope I've inspired, or at least some sort of insight into sort of teaching you something new, because I've mentioned I have Asperger's, but I haven't actually explained it. And I don't know if anyone on YouTube has. I'm going to look that up. In fact, let's do it in front of you to see if there are actually any videos. If we go on to good old YouTube. Chugga. Oh, Goody Ashens has done some more funny thingies. Oh god, it's not in the bloody search bar. Ah. Well, we do have people on here. But, and you know what? I'm going to watch some of these because it'd be interesting to see what other people have put on the subject. But, for now, I would like to say thanks for watching, and if you've made it to the end, here's a little Easter egg I want you to put in the comments. comments. That should be PLCC Put that in the comments. I know you've watched it to the end. I liked how some of you actually responded to that in the last video. I did like rambling crap or something. I said something like that to put in the comments. Keep doing that, because then I know how many of you actually watched through that. It gives me an idea. Well, I kind of want to educate people, but I know some people don't like the long videos, and I can understand why. But I'd like to say thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to have spread some knowledge and something new to the subject of my disability. But for now, I must do preparations. I'm going to get this compiled now. Thanks for watching. I better stop before I keep rambling. Starting to view some of these videos wasn't a bad idea. Some of you won't know what this is about, because this is going to be put in between when the memory runs out, rather than it could be at the end actually, I don't know. But I forgot to mention about sensory issues. Now, this goes to things like being... When I walk around generally, I am quite clumsy. I will often walk into things. Quite often, whether it be bookcases, tables, not when chairs are put on tables, it's not uncommon for me to knock them off and they all go like dominoes around the classroom, which is always quite pleasurably amusing. It was always quite amusing in primary school. And there would be the odd occasion where I might intentionally knock a chair off, but the majority of the time it was an accident, whether it was me swinging around a bag or just not really going. And yeah, at the same time, when it comes to using my hands, I am so precise, because I tinker with electronics and you need precision. I can do things like that, hold my fingers really close without them touching, without a problem. And the same thing goes with my driving. I will drive like my car is on rails. I will stay that much into the part of the road on motorways and whatnot. And I will always insist on driving within the designated lines and not ever going over them unless I have to. Because that's like your designated areas. And I actually kind of like how the highway code is set out. I know some people absolutely loathe it. I actually kind of like it. It's logical. It makes sense. Someone or people have sat there and literally thought out every possible thing, every possible loophole, and thought it through. It's fantastic. The road traffic system is brilliant. So well thought out. It's just a shame that bloody hardly anyone listens to it, because if they all did, we wouldn't have half the road accidents we get. We'd lose most of them. And the other thing, going back to sensory issues, is things being either underly sensitive to something or overly sensitive to something. Now, I used to have laser, literally. Where is it? There it goes. Laser sharp vision. But not anymore, as you can see. But one thing is I still have very sensitive hearing, and yeah, you get things which are too loud that some people don't bother people, like balloons bursting. It doesn't bother most people. I can't stand it. It is just like, ah! It's like this sonic boom of just pain comes to you. Oh, it's horrible. And some literally are like a sonic boom which hurts your ears. I remember going to an air show and there were jets like breaking the sound barrier, like right next to the audience. They were barely 100 meters above us. Probably about that. And literally the noise was just like, ah, too loud. It was brilliant, but when they came flying over, good luck trying to get a shot with the camera, because by the time you got your shot, you'd then have just the sheer sonic boom was just too much for my ears to handle. Most people are like, no problem. And it is, I have tolerances on sound. Nightclubs, the sound systems are often turned up way too high for my liking. Especially when people try to shout into your ear, it's just like, oh! Communication in them places is impossible. Some people have some good ideas, using their iPhones as sort of like type text on and show it to each other or something. But yeah, it's sensory issues. Yeah, that's my one. Hearing. it's overly sensitive, and if noise levels go to above a sort of like sonic boom, let's say sonic boom breaking sound barrier level, my ears do not like it one bit. Whether it be explosives going off, I love fireworks, but sometimes they are just far too loud. I love jets and planes, but Jesus, you don't realise how loud they are until you are actually right next to them as they're taking off or something. Make sure you cover your ears because it hurts. And just that deep rumble, you feel it going through your whole body. God knows what the decibel rating is, probably up in the thousands. But yeah, that's sensory issues, that's another thing that's common. Other than that, I think I covered everything else, which is quite impressive. It shows just quite how much I do actually know about the subject, but when someone tries and asks me the question, what is it? Well, really you need something as long as this to explain it. But for now, thanks for watching. On to the next part, or end of video, wherever I'm going to put it at the end of video, so thanks for watching. Night night, and enjoy yourself. I'm going to do the introductory video. Bye.